I'm Dr. John Gartner.
And I'm Dr. Harry Segal.
And welcome to another session of Shrinking Trump.
We have been doing this show now for almost 4 months. More, actually, I think. We're almost heading toward our 5th month. And John and I are clinical psychologists who became very concerned. 4 or 5 years ago, John started a movement to alert people to the severe personality disorder that Trump suffers from, called malignant narcissism. But really, in the last few years, John and I and other psychologists and clinicians have been really concerned about what we see as early signs of dementia in Trump. And that's expressed by what John loves to find almost each week, phonemic paraphasias, where Trump can't finish a word he begins. Also, a strange gait that he has when he walks. And finally, a narrowing of cognitive associations. What that means is his explanations have become more simple, more concrete. And it's almost at times, and I watch his speeches, as though he's gumming together ideas rather than building an argument or raising a kind of point with the audience that will help them to see it. So that's been our purpose, John. And how do you think it's going?
Well, I appreciate the fact, Harry, that every week you kind of summarize the purpose of the show and the history of the show. And one of the things that we thought was so clever at the time that we conceived of the show was the title, Shrinking Trump. Of course, because it was meant to be a double entendre. We're shrinks and we're analyzing Trump. I think everybody gets that part. But it was also meant to suggest that Trump himself is shrinking. Yes. That we're observing a shrinking Trump because he has a deteriorating cognitive decline, as well as a psychiatric disorder that tends towards greater madness and greater decompensation, and as it flourishes as people age. And at first we were on that line, and then there was a disruption, right, where suddenly Trump didn't look like he was shrinking; he looked like he was expanding. And we have to be honest about that. We all got scared, right? It was after the debate and the assassination attempt. It seemed as if he was almost becoming a mythic figure, the raised fist. Yeah, exactly. And suddenly we weren't laughing about the shrinking Trump anymore. But now that Kamala has taken control, I think, and he is really on the defense and really decompensating, I believe we can go back to our original double entendre meaning, which is we are observing a shrinking Trump. And one of the ways that is being achieved is through the power of ridicule. That this works with bullies, right? If you tease a bully, you basically unmask them and unhorse them. You throw them off balance. It's one of the ways that you can deal with a bully. And it's interesting. I was someone pointed out. I wish I could remember. One of our listeners pointed out Sun Tzu. In The Art of War, said if your opponent is excitable, irritate him. And so it's really right, because he'll make a mistake. And so what I'm excited about is not just the work that George Conway is doing and Lincoln Project doing to microbeam these things to his clubs that are making him become more irrational and unhinged. The Harris campaign has also got the message that ridicule works. They have joy, and joy beats hate. Okay, but what's so clever about them is I want to say they're playing three-dimensional chess, and you've pointed out that's kind of a fake thing. There's no such thing as three-dimensional chess, but they are playing chess. Oh, yeah. This is a very sophisticated campaign. I mean, I really can't contrast it more pointedly to the Biden campaign that kept making these mistakes. We kept yelling at them. It had no effect. I don't think we need to tell anything to the Harris campaign. They have got it down. They've got the message. And so in addition to projecting joy, they're also projecting scorn and ridicule. And they're doing both. John, they're chewing gum at the same time.
Yeah. No, right. They're doing many things at once, which is extraordinary. But one thing I want to just to give a sort of a nuanced riff on what you said a few minutes ago. While Biden was under siege to change his mind, to drop out of the race, Trump went quiet. It's one of the few times where he wasn't doing very much. He was being told to let Biden flounder. And after the assassination attempt, where he had that instinctive gesture, He insisted on it, which is the part of Trump that was intact. It was rather effective, I think, really brilliant.
The showman.
But you know what? In that debate where he looked so much better than Biden, he was actually lying and also deteriorating in his answers. It really was there all along. It was just being masked by the spectacle of Biden struggling and by the media's attention on that struggle. And Trump was getting a pass. And as you're pointing out with the Lincoln Project and the Conway's group and now the Harris campaign, he's no longer getting a pass. He's in the spotlight.
Right. So let's look at how the press is reporting on this change. Finally, and can I just add another finally? The Democrats have found Trump's Achilles heel. Ridicule him. Kamala Harris gets it. Yes, we should fear Trump, but we should also mock him mercilessly because it drives him nuts.
And third, and most of all, sustained ridicule has the potential to reinforce the downward spiral Trump is now in. He probably likes it when we call him a fascist or authoritarian because it expresses fear of him and he aches to be feared. It acknowledges his power. This motivates him and makes him stronger. Ridicule makes him weaker. Ridicule makes him small. Ridicule makes him desperate. He'll try to respond with ridicule of his own, but he's not a clever man. He's a stupid man. He has no wit. He has no sense of mischief. He doesn't read. He doesn't think beyond first reactions. These nicknames of his, which the press has made such a big deal of over the years, they're nothing. They're dick contests put into words. Little Marco, Sleepy Joe. There's nothing remotely clever about any of them.
I think that's a great analysis. And that's the point. It makes him weak. And so that's the thing. When people were screaming, he's a fascist, he's going to kill us all. And we had weak appearing Biden. It was like, yeah, but he's strong.
Yeah.
and as we've been saying, strong trumps weak. Strong and bad trumps weak and good.
Always.
Now we have strong and good against, is it strong and bad or weak and bad? You see, that's the thing. Now we're pointing out his weakness. And I tell you, these people.
One thing to add, though, as far as our clinical analysis, because remember, we're therapists above all, is that I think Trump in 2016 was actually quite clever. And he had great nicknames. They were devastating. They weren't silly or stupid. They were effective. Do you remember when he called what's her name? The senator from Massachusetts. He called her Pocahontas. It was devastating. It stopped her in her tracks. It was mean and it was racist and it was, corrupt. So we've seen a decline because I think the Trump we're seeing now is limited. The nicknames aren't good. His comebacks are weak. He's always calling people corrupt or lunatics. He's not. There's no nuance anymore. So stupid. I think we're hitting him as he's declining. You see my point?
I do. That he was a bully, but he's not as good a bully as he used to be. That's a good point. And now he's faced his match. So let's take one theme. One of the things that I've noticed now is that the Harris campaign and the press are starting to be in coordination. I don't mean they're in cahoots, but what I mean is, first of all, Kamala HQ is a force on Twitter. If any of you are on Twitter, you'll see every day these incredibly witty videos, and everybody in the press, whatever they say, they watch Twitter. They just do. And they're certainly watching Kamala HQ. And so when Kamala HQ says something that is witty, but also on target and correct and strikes a chord, the press reports on it as a serious theme, echoing with earned media the message that the Harris campaign is trying to put out, exactly what was not going on with Biden. So let me just give you one example. Let's look at this video about Sleepy Don.
Because people get bored, but they don't get bored with me.
6.5 hours later.
Lawyers and your carpenters and your electricians and your drivers, and you're doing a lot of things. By the way, no
beautiful F-35 Lightnings.
Police is blowing up. Russia's blowing up with Ukraine. There's wars starting all over the place. Looks like bad things could happen. And 89% increase in aggravated assault, and 56 department to go after their political opponent, but they're not doing well. I'm the only, nobody lies like her. She's a liar. She makes up crap. She's the one gonna raise, she said, Donald Trump.
For the people who were just listening, what we were just seeing while the lullaby was playing and he was meandering on and on is the people behind him who were falling asleep. So it's one person yawning or sleeping after another while they're playing the lullaby, and he's droning and droning on. Now, let's see how the press is covering this same issue.
Trump allies try to energize him as he struggles to adapt to Harris. The Republican nominee has fixated on Biden's withdrawal. It feels like he lost his mojo. The stakes for Trump this election are arguably the highest they've ever been. His criminal cases don't go away if he loses, yet he seems to be phoning it in, running a remarkably low-energy, undisciplined campaign, says Elisa Farah Griffin, a former White House spokeswoman who quit after Trump supporters attacked the Capitol on January 6th. From spending days off the campaign trail golfing to coming up with frankly weak nicknames like Kamala, it feels like he's lost his mojo.
So, they're calling him low energy Don, basically, in the Washington Post, right? And so this is how we're starting to really roll now. We're changing the narrative. Finally, we are turning the page. Harry, you mentioned the debate. Well, before we move on to the debate, was there something you wanted to say about that?
No. Now, John, was that first one was it Kamala Warren's or was it Kamala HQ?
No, very good question. That was the official Kamala HQ Twitter account that put out the Sleepy Don.
Okay, very good.
And as you pointed out, the one of the graphics was from SpongeBob. Is that what you were explaining? The 6
hours later.
So that's the other thing about the Kamala HQ people. They're hip. They're cool. They get the cultural references. And so again, he's very sensitive to hip and cool and celebrity, and they're just keep out hipping him. So look, this whole thing about the debate, right? Now, I want to admit something that I was on Jennifer Rubin's podcast last week. That isn't what I'm admitting. But when I was on her podcast, I had to admit that the one time I've been quoted in the Washington Post, which was by her, I predicted that Trump would withdraw from the debate with Biden. Okay, I really want to put, because that was so wrong, right? I was so off, right? It happens. Not that I am often quoted in the Washington Post. Try never. So I'm sorry. The one time I was quoted, I was wrong, but I said I really think that Trump might withdraw from the debate with Kamala because I think he's really, really scared. So this is what's so interesting. Now, talk about chess. Let's follow this in great detail. The sequence, the timing of this. When she first became the nominee, he said he wasn't going to debate her. He withdrew from the debate, he said. Then 12 days later, he changed his mind, said no, he would debate. Okay. And then on August 25th, he put out a post that generated lots of news coverage saying, oh, now he is dropping out of the debate. So let's just look at that tweet. Actually, it's not a tweet. I'm sorry. It was a Truth Social post, but it was retweeted by not Kamala HQ, but an independent account called Kamala Wins. I watched ABC fake news this morning. Both lightweight reporter Jonathan K ? Ridiculous and biased interview of Tom Cotton, who was fantastic, and their so-called panel of Trump haters. And I ask, why would I do the debate against Kamala Harris on that network? Will panelist Donna Brazile give the questions to the Marxist candidate like she did for crooked Hillary Clinton? Will Kamala's best friend, who heads up ABC, do likewise? Where is little George Slopadopoulos hanging out now? Will he be involved? They've got a lot of questions to answer. Why did Harris turn down Fox, NBC, CBS, and even CNN? Stay tuned. Now then, look at the quote tweet. They're saying breaking. Now I want you to know, Trump put this out at 10:04 on August 25th. By 10:24, this independent account said, breaking. Donald Trump is now wavering on his commitment to debate Kamala Harris. It's clear Donald Trump is terrified of Kamala Harris. Now, you see,
that's great.
His way of getting out of it is to say, oh, they're all biased. They're all, it's rigged. I'm not going to do it. And it's not working. 20 minutes later, he gets slapped with, oh, so you're scared, huh? Well, that was on August 25th. Let's look at the video that the official Harris HQ account put out the very next day, 24 hours later, on August 6th.
But because they already know everything. They say, oh, Trump's, not doing the debate. That's the same thing they'll say now. I mean, right now I say, why should I do a debate? I'm leading in the polls. And everybody knows her. Everybody knows me. But when I looked at the hostility of that, I said, why am I doing it? Let's do it with another.
The clucking is priceless.
So great.
It's so great.
The more I see that clip, the funnier it gets.
The funnier it gets, and it's a kind of ridicule you can't actually come back from.
No,
it's like being booed off the stage. What are you going to say? Don't boo me. I'm not booable. The clucking is humiliating and it's unanswerable. And what they were going to do is they were going to turn up the volume on the clucks, right? It was going to become a cacophony of clucks chasing him around. That they already had this planned out. You can already see people were going to go to his rally with rubber chickens and make clucking sounds. And I don't know this for a fact, okay, but I can just see how they were just starting a new offensive. And they were going to press that advantage and frame the issue. He's trying to frame the issue. Why would I do stupid? You see, ABC, they're so biased. And they're going to frame the issue. No. Remember, if your opponent is defining you, you're losing, right? So they were going to succeed in defining him as the chicken, okay? What that did then was force him, if you think about this as a game of chess, right? Suddenly the bishop is moved to a place where you've got to move your king. He can't stay where he is, right? Because you'll lose, right? And so he thought he could stay out of the debate circle. Now they move that bishop threatening him. He had to move his king into the debate circle. Okay. So they have forced him into a position he didn't want to be in, where he will be vulnerable and he will be slaughtered.
Well, but also the Harris campaign, has changed the agreement because they want a debate where the mics are not muted, because they want people to hear Trump impulsively interrupting. And his campaign is arguing to keep the mics muted. So we'll see who wins this one. But I think
what's interesting about that.
Yeah,
what's interesting about that is that the muted mics were imposed to control Trump. Originally, it was the Biden people who couldn't abide his constant, gish galloping, interrupting, hypomanic, pressured speech. It can be very overwhelming, right? It is. So it was, and he would never stop talking, and the moderators couldn't control him. So the whole turning off the mic thing was sort of like just an attempt to have some capacity to set boundaries, right? Some external boundaries that they could control. What Harris is doing is showing, I think, a lot of balls, frankly. You know what I mean? She's saying, no, we don't need the net. No, I don't need pads. Like, no, let's go. Come on. Let's go bare-fisted.
Let him do it.
Ready. Let him do it. And we can do it too. We can interrupt him because, I can interject. But when I interject, it's going to hurt. It's going to be a memorable line. It's going to land. So sure, take off the restraints. Take the safeties off. We're ready to rumble.
And I have to tell you, in 2020, when I saw that debate, when Trump was interrupting and screaming, my thought was, he soiled yet another institution. He just craps over everything. We'll talk about it later, but even this thing in the graveyard, it was him breaking a rule, because he just breaks rules. He doesn't really care.
Well, he was desecrating a cemetery.
Desecrating a cemetery. So he for his political gain. So it made sense for Biden's people. You're right to say let's turn off the mic, because they wanted Biden to be able to get some momentum. Actually, it made it worse for Biden.
Yeah, it did. It did, especially when they cut off his mic when he said, "I beat Medicare," and then he couldn't explain what he meant. One of the great memorably bad moments in debating. Well, so as we were saying, we're on a mission, a psyop, to beam commercials into Trump's clubs that will destabilize him. So as you know, the Lincoln Project, we talked about this, has been sent a letter by Trump's lawyers, a cease and desist letter, to get them to stop beaming advertisements into his club. But unfortunately, they don't really control that. They have no power to stop them from buying advertising. It's interesting. I was thought Fox would refuse to take their advertising, but apparently it's a third party that sells the advertising. So it's not even via Fox. It's a local company that just does it.
Absolutely.
So they're happy to take the money. So look at the next commercial that's going to be beamed into Mar-a-Lago this weekend.
The numbers are in, Donald. Kamala Harris is a star, a real star. Her TV ratings bigger than yours by a lot. Her polls rising. Yours, limp. She's winning, Donald. She's better than you on TV, smarter, more charisma, a better speaker, more patriotic, more American, stronger. Even Fox News is hanging up on your crazy calls.
Mr. President, thank you so
very much, sir.
You've lost it, Donald, and you're about to lose everything.
Nothing like the Republicans eating their own.
They sure know how to do it, don't they?
Oh, mean. Oh, boy, do they.
They really know how to go for the juggler. So I'm glad we have some of them on our side. But here's the really funny thing. One of the things we were doing with the PAC, George and I were doing a call with fundraisers, and he raised this really interesting point. He compared Trump to Hitler in the final days, when he's heading towards the bunker. And in those final days, all of his generals, because he couldn't stand the narcissistic injury of knowing he was losing, that all of his generals pretended he had all these divisions he didn't really have. And he was moving them around this big map, but it was all an illusion just to maintain his fragile narcissistic ego. And so when you have these malignant narcissists, if they're narcissistically injured, all hell breaks loose. And so part of being one of their supporters is trying to protect their fragile little egos. So some of the people who are supporters of Trump, what are they going to do? They're going to beam their own happy "We love you, Trump" commercials into Mar-a-Lago. Let's see this this article. Trump staffers spend thousands on pointless ads just to keep him happy. That's all. I just wanted to see that that headline. So think about this. They're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars just to fluff him, just to plump up his ego and put him in a good mood. Yeah, no. I think see, and this is where clinical psychologists and other clinicians can help the public understand this a bit better. That fragility, people with this kind of severe personality disorder and fragility, and the way I've been arguing about it over the last few months is that every moment is the potential deflation of who Trump is. He's always puffing himself up through saying how brilliant he is, through crowds. He loves when crowds cheer him. And when anyone attacks him, he has to attack right away because he's always on the verge of deflating and collapsing into self-hatred. So what happens with people like this, it happened with Nixon too, by the way, is you have to have the close advisors shoring him up, because an unhappy Donald is a very undisciplined, self-destructive one. And this is a really rare example where staff says, we better divert some funds to try to counter these mean ads that are making Donald so upset. Right. In the history of politics, has a politician ever run an ad for himself, for his own consumption? So it's nuts. Okay. Well, Harry, I know you watched, as you always say, you watch these so we don't have to. You watched the whole speech he gave to the National Guard, and you had some clips that you wanted to share with us. I do. And when Trump says really evocative things, which sometimes he does because he's just malevolent, and sometimes he does it because he's trying to get the rhythm back. He's trying to get the media attention, because for Trump, there's no such thing as bad publicity. If they're talking about him, he's winning. But I wanted to take a closer look at the way he gives these speeches. And what's interesting about this is not a rally, okay? This is a speech before members of the National Guard.
And so Trump had a long speech written for him. And whenever he's speaking for the teleprompter, he looks this way. You'll notice it in the clip for those of you who are watching the video version of our podcast. But if you're not and you're just hearing the audio, you're going to hear the shift, because when he goes from this to the rally, you can see him kind of, again, puffing up in the way that I described. So let's start with the first clip, Rex, would you?
Our country is being destroyed by a radical political class that sends our guardsmen and women to defend the borders of distant foreign nations while they surrender our own borders to an invasion right here at home, the likes of which we've never seen before. You missed birthdays and holidays deploying overseas in the global war on terror. Only Kamala Harris is letting terrorists come into our country at record numbers and letting jihadists pour into our homeland by the thousands and thousands and thousands. Can't do that.
Okay, so jihadists are pouring over the border. It's all made up. But notice how he's looking to his right and reading. And then he's improvising for just a moment. Kamala Harris, thousands and thousands. All right.
You know, it's really amazing how, before you said that, I just think it's an enormous magic trick that he can make thousands, even millions of people appear and disappear. You know, right? Remember when he said millions, he said millions of immigrants, illegal immigrants were bussed to New England to vote. And I remember thinking, like, that would be like a D-Day invasion. You know, like, how would that be missed? Nobody would take a cell phone picture of the millions of illegal immigrants busing to the, and so it's like the thousands and thousands of jihadists. No one's taken a single picture. It's just crazy. But in his mind, because as we know, he creates reality and in his mind, and that's reality. So he has millions of crowd people in his crowd that aren't there, and Kamala's crowd is AI induced, and but it's just really amazing that he gets away with not just verifiable lies, but I mean, like, lies that they can't be true. Right. Thank you.
You remember the caravan that was coming in the first off-year election?
And also don't forget the Chinese army invasion.
Oh yeah, of course.
People never forget the Chinese army. People forget, but they shouldn't.
Don't forget things that never happened. You're right. Don't forget things that never happened.
I know. Even that's what happens when you get old, Harry. You start to forget things that never happened. It sucks. What could you do?
What could you do? All right. Let's go on to the next one, Rex.
When I'm back in the White House, we will expel the warmongers, the profiteers, and take over our government, and we will restore world peace, and it will be, again, peace through strength.
Again, this is an example of him reading off the teleprompter. It is written for him. It's not true, but it's not outrageous. But
restoring world peace is kind of grandiose. I mean, that is kind of a grandiose idea that you're going to restore world peace. Yeah.
Well, yes. I mean, he's always made claims that aren't true, but you can tell this written.
But it's coherent. It's coherent. Yeah.
He's reading it, and he's bored. Right. So let's go on to the next one, Rex, if we can.
We are not just going to make America great again. We're going to make American democracy great again. We're going to bring it back. My opponent, Kamala Harris, and Tim Walz are promising the exact opposite. They want endless war, open borders, voting rights, and free health care for illegal aliens. Soviet-style price controls, censorship, unlimited migration from terrorist hotspots, and unchecked power for the deep state. This fight is no longer between Democrats and Republicans. This is a fight between communism and freedom.
And that's where they wrote that for him. This is where he lands now. Kamala's a communist, right, and therefore she's elected. There'll be a communist takeover of the country.
Right.
This is where we are.
Right. And of course, it's the opposite. If he's elected, there'll be an authoritarian takeover of the country. And I mean, again, this is not going to really land. You know, I'm thinking of Kamala as a communist. Would she wear like a red beret? I mean, what? Is she holding Mao's little red book?
No, it's just so crazy. And it's hearkening back to, I mean, this is sort of McCarthy fears, right? I mean, this is going back to the 50s and 60s. I mean, this isn't. All right.
Right. No, exactly. And he doesn't mind going back, because he loves to go back. I mean, as people point, he loves to go back to the 1850s, So those old themes, he loves to revive them. Yes.
Yeah. But I think in this case, it's, I mean, I can imagine them writing these speeches and him sort of saying, no, until they're extreme enough. But he's so uncomfortable. He can't rouse an audience speaking this way. He can't.
No, that's a good point. He's reading off the teleprompter and they're saying this is low energy. Given how hateful the words are, the affect is actually a little bit dead. It really is interesting. If you're giving this kind of red meat and you're saying, we've got to stop the evil people. They're evil. They're bad. They want to kill. But you're going, we got to stop the evil people. They're bad. They want to kill everybody. It's like, it's like he's tired of reciting the apocalypse, the apocalyptic narrative. So it's kind of dragging. But it makes a difference.
And don't worry, because very soon he's going to go off the teleprompter. But we're not quite there yet. Rex, there's something at the end of this clip I want you all to hear.
It gave us Russia going into Ukraine. It gave us the October 7th attack on Israel, because it gave us lack of respect. We're not respected. We were respected very much 4 years ago. We're not respected now. The voters are going to fire Kamala and Joe on November 5th, we hope.
We hope. That's the first time I've ever heard him suggest that he might not win. And
that's a really good point. And he says it in kind of a depressive tone too. We hope.
Yeah,
we hope.
We hope.
Like, it doesn't sound like he's that hopeful.
Well, you know what I'm going to say? That's a little bit of psychological health breaking through.
A little bit of reality breaking through.
Yeah, but that's psychologically healthy to be able to see reality for at least a moment, right?
And what he's seeing is a shrinking Trump. He
exactly.
Right?
And when I was talking about that fear of being deflated and collapsing, there it is. He's imagining being rejected by the voters, and that's where you get that depressive tone. All right, now we're going to watch him recover, quote unquote, and go back into his kind of hypomanic raving. Go ahead, X.
We'll get the resignations of every single senior official who touched the Afghanistan calamity to be on my desk at noon on Inauguration Day. You have to fire people. You have to fire people when they do a bad job. We never fire anybody. You got to fire them. Like on The Apprentice, you're fired. You did a lousy job. You did a terrible, terrible disservice to our country. You get fired when that happens. Nobody got fired. Nobody ever gets fired in this administration. It's amazing. All the bad things that have happened, nobody ever gets fired. The problem is when you fire somebody, they always end up writing a book about you, I've had more books written about me. I fire a lot of people when they don't do a good job. I get a book written about me by all these losers that get fired.
There it is. Now he feels better. He's literally mobilized within himself. He went off script and went to The Apprentice, where he was successful for a while.
Right.
And then talked about the losers he's fired, who have written books about him. And now he's puffed up.
Yeah. Also, that tagline, "You're fired," he's very famous for that, and so it animates his sense of celebrity and grandiosity to echo that tagline and get some reaction. And you're right; it helps him feel like triumphant over these people who are basically his former staff members who are saying he's a terrible, terrible person and a dangerous leader. So it's not a good thing, but somehow he's actually very cleverly making them sound like disgruntled, fired employees because he was strong and he had the strength to fire the bad people. So yeah, it's actually kind of a good reversal for him.
And his national security advisor, H.R. McMaster, just published a book this week.
Yes.
About really how disturbed he is. But I wanted the audience to see how someone with severe narcissistic disorder collapses and recovers. And they recover by self-inflating. You think of someone pumping up a balloon. It's kind of like
that's
that.
a really good point. You actually see undulations within the speech. I think that's which is one of the reasons people may not be catching these nuances, that there's a depressive tone when he's droning on in the way they're making fun of in that Kamala Harris HQ, sleepy time video, where he is kind of just droning on and not really, the words are passionate and fiery and meat eating, but the tone is kind of like, and they're evil. But then, and then he even has the, if I hope I win, I hope. But then you're right. He kind of, right. But then he kind of raises up again, going into his apprentice mode. And it's such an undulation, you might not notice it, except the press is talking about him being low energy. So they are getting it.
Yes, but they're missing this psychological shift.
Yeah.
So John and I, as clinicians, we pay attention to changes within an hour. Like, part of what we're paying attention to when a patient is speaking to us is changes in mood and in energy. For example, many years ago, I had a patient who noticed me looking at the clock, and he said, "What, am I boring you? Why are you looking at the clock?" And I said, "Well, it's 20 past the hour, and you usually don't get to your feelings until about this time." And so that's why we're paying attention to the changes in Trump's speech, because we're watching psychological shifts as they happen. I just have a few more. There's one, it's not quite a phonemic paraphasia, but it's one of those weird things that he does. I chose this one for John.
I saw what they did with ISIS. We knocked out 100% quickly of the ISIS caliphate.
100% quickly.
Well, recently he said he was talking about 100% of the jobs are going to illegal immigrants, even more than 100%.
Even more than 100%. But he's very, very smart. He went to Wharton. All right. I just have two more. This one I've never seen before. And I mentioned last week that I watch these things. I always watch for what's new. And he has this thing we call, as someone else has called, Sir Stories, where someone is talking to him, "Sir," and then Trump is triumphant. Well, this is a particularly nasty one. He's talking to one of the members of the Taliban in negotiating withdrawing from Afghanistan, and he refers to this person as Abdul.
And dignity, think of it. 18 months, not one soldier was killed under mine. And I spoke to Abdul. I told Abdul, "You can't do that. Can't do it. It's going to be bad, Abdul." And he said, "Your Excellency, but why do you send me a picture of my house?"
Why do you send me a picture? It actually goes on after that, but that's all we have to see. He's showing he's so great that he can even threaten to bomb somebody that he's negotiating with. It's all about puffing himself up. I have one last one, and this is a bit in the weeds, but I thought it'd be helpful to our audience to listen to the way in which his campaign will take the thread of something true and then distort it into really into malice, essentially into a lie. Let's hear this one, Rex.
One of the great, and the other is VA accountability. Do you know what that is? VA accountability. The veterans had some horrible, horrible people in there, sadists, bad people. They treated our veterans very badly because they weren't in prime time. In prime time, they wouldn't have talked to them that way. But they weren't in prime time. And they were sadists and a lot of other things, 9,000 of them. And it was a shocking act of betrayal. We had to fire. We fired 9,000 people that were bad, and we replaced them with good people. And then Kamala and Biden gutted those reforms after they got in, and they tried to reinstate many of the people that were fired for good reason, because they weren't treating our veterans. They were sadists in many cases, vicious people.
Okay. Let me tell you what's true. There was a scandal in 2017, and you might remember it, where in the VA system, particularly in Walter Reed, it turns out there was some very, very abusive staff. And so the Congress passed a bipartisan VA Accountability Act that would allow the administration, whoever it is, to remove people who were like that. And it was a good program. It wasn't initiated by Trump. It was initiated by the Armed Services Committee. After Biden came in, the courts began to limit that ability, saying that the executive branch didn't have the grounds to remove people. And so Biden, after a certain point, stopped doing it and was trying to pass a new version of it. But so Trump takes that one thing and says, not only were there vicious sadists, but Biden took it away, which he didn't, and then rehired all the sadists, which he didn't.
Yeah. You know, what struck me about that, I didn't know some of that background, but what struck me about that is, remember, one of the 4 pillars of malignant narcissism is sadism. And one of the things Trump does is project onto others. So, okay, there were some abuses in the system, whatever, people weren't getting treatment, or maybe some people were misbehaving. But he portrays this Mengele kind of, you know, these Nazi doctors, these sadists. I mean, this is really coming out, you know, this is the person who, after all, still misses the late, great Hannibal Lecter. You know, so he has some fascination with sadism and people using power to inflict pain and torture on other people. So, you know, he's turned this in his fantasies into some kind of sadistic Nazi doctor drama.
And John, you're absolutely right. But remember that line he just said? They wouldn't have done it if they had been in prime time. He's talking about himself again. He tries not to be sadistic in public on prime time. He's identifying with it for sure.
Yeah. Well, his sadism is being exposed whether he likes it or not. So we had just a couple more things from this week that we wanted to go over. You know, I have to say, he is incredibly creative, right, in his grifting. Right. I mean, right. Every day it's something more ridiculous. The gold sneakers, or whatever.
Bible.
Trump pizza. Bibles. Yes. Thank you. But you mean, so this week, he's selling some cards. And by the way, some people, I know, I'm always sensitive to the fact that some people are listening and they're not watching. What we're going to see is him selling these trading cards. But I really feel sorry for you who are just listening, because the pictures are hilarious. Okay. It's, as you've probably seen in other places, idealized images of him that are completely caricatured and over the top and ridiculous. So let's see his latest grift.
Your favorite president, Donald J. Trump, with some very exciting news. By popular demand, I'm doing a new series of Trump digital trading cards. You all know what they are. We've had a lot of fun with them. It's called the America First Collection. 50 all-new stunning digital trading cards. It's really something. These cards show me dancing and even me holding some Bitcoins. Here's the best part. I'm doing great things for my Trump digital card collectors. First, there's the real physical Trump cards. Purchase 15 or more of my Trump digital trading cards and we'll mail you a beautiful physical trading card. It's really, I think, quite something. Each physical trading card has an authentic piece of my suit that I wore for the presidential debate, and people are calling it the knockout suit. I don't know about that, but that's what they're calling it. So we'll cut up the knockout suit, and you're going to get a piece of it, and we'll be randomly autographing 5 of them, a true collector's item. This is something to give your family, your kids, your grandchildren. Number 2 is to purchase 75 of my Trump digital trading cards, and you will also be invited to join me for a gala dinner at my beautiful country club in Jupiter, Florida. We really have tremendous dinners with my collectors, have a lot of fun together. We're going to have a good time. I'm keeping my Trump digital trading cards at the same price of $99 each. We've done that right from the beginning. So go to collecttrumpcards.com. It's really easy to buy. You just need an email address and a credit card or crypto. You know, they call me the crypto president. I don't know if that's true or not, but a lot of people are saying that. So don't miss out. Go to collecttrumpcards.com. Go right now and collect your piece of American history. Let's have fun together and enjoy my Trump cards. We're going to have a lot of fun. We'll be talking about it for a long time. Thank you very much. Have a good time.
Let the fight begin.
Just unbelievable. Every time you think he can't go to a new Huckster Low, he does. I love the piece about getting a little piece of the suit.
Wait, and if you buy 75 of them, which is $750, you get invited to a dinner at Mar-a-Lago?
No, that's $7,500. $7,500 or $100 a piece.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so if I drop $7,500, I get to have dinner, but not with him, do I?
No, you get to go to dinner at his club and he'll take a selfie with you. If you're lucky. And also, by the way, I think, remember last week we were talking about how Bitcoin is there's always a grift within the grift, you know? And so you see, there's a lot of the cards, those who were watching didn't see it, but him holding Bitcoins like a shield or like a sword or like, you know, big muscles. He's holding a Bitcoin orb. I don't know. Bitcoin is the new grift. You know, because he used to be against crypto. We talked about this last week, but now that the crypto tech bros are backing him with big money, including Elon Musk, who are all going to make a fortune if Bitcoin and these other digital currencies are traded more widely. And he's already promised that the government will become a buyer of Bitcoin. Right. So they will have a guaranteed buyer to drive the price up week after week after week. And so this is the hugest transfer of wealth scheme from the poor to the rich ever imagined. Okay, Harry, you won't even need to write your quarterly tax check to the government, but just write it to Elon Musk and save, and they'll write, because they're going to be using it to buy his Bitcoin. So anyway, I just wanted to point out how ridiculous it is, but also how, once again, there's a serious grift in here, trillions of dollars that would go from, you know, us to them.
Absolutely.
And here is just a little video that the Midas Touch people put out about Trump's malignant narcissism. What I love about it is you hear the narrator's voice. It sounds very 1950s public service announcement. And they're talking about how to be mindful for employers to catch potential employees like Donald Trump.
We will be creating so much electricity that you'll be saying, please, please, President, we don't want any more electricity. We can't stand it. You'll be begging me, no more electricity, sir.
Is someone you're thinking of hiring promising things that sound too good to be true?
I could stop wars with a telephone call.
Do their facts and figures not add up?
Actually, beyond a number of 100%. It's a much higher number than that, but...
Does the candidate seem self-absorbed?
People have come up to me and they say, sir, thank you. Sir, thank you. Sir, I want to thank you. You've made me a hero to my wife and to my family.
In all likelihood, you've encountered the malignant narcissist. Malignant narcissism is a severe personality disorder that pairs the self-absorbed behavior of narcissists with the unfeeling manipulation of sociopaths. Unlike those who simply enjoy recognition from their peers, the malignant narcissist is driven by a desire to dominate for personal gain. And there are red flags you can look out for. Like, do they have an unrealistic view of their own importance?
I have been the best president for the black population since Abraham Lincoln.
Do they only regard other people as tools for personal gain?
I don't care about you. I just want your vote. I don't care.
Do they lack empathy, even for children?
Actually, I was only kidding. You can get the baby out of here.
I think she really believed me that I love having a baby crying while I'm speaking.
Do they speak with an excessive use of superlatives?
Who are the best and who are the worst? Best, the worst, biggest, lowest, best. I find it to be about the worst.
If the candidate you're interviewing exhibits some or all of these red flags, trust your instincts and show them the door. Your organization deserves an employee that can lead with integrity and respect. Stay vigilant. Look for the red flags.
It's just a cute video that I wanted to show. Harry, you had talked about. Well, did something you wanted to say about that before we get? You
No. I think that's.
Okay, you wanted. Okay, so we just wanted to show that. But anyway, Harry, so you wanted to talk about the dust up at Arlington that happened.
Yes, yeah, for sure. So just so that people understand, Trump wanted to go to Arlington on the anniversary of that horrible bombing in Afghanistan, of that botched withdrawal from Afghanistan. He wanted to, of course, use it for political purposes. And so he went there with Vance, I think, and other people to meet with his family. And they had some pictures taken in a part of Arlington Cemetery that is it's permitted to have pictures taken. But then they went to the grave sites, which is really the term people have been using on television. It's the most sacred spot. But there's actually a federal law against taking photographs or using that space for partisan purposes. And when Trump went in there and his audiovisual people were trying to bring equipment in, there was actually an altercation with a woman who was representing Arlington, tried to fight them from doing it. And nevertheless, Trump was able to get a video, I think, captured on a cell phone.
They physically pushed past her. I mean, they physically pushed her out of the way.
It was a physical altercation. And then the the family wrote a thing saying how grateful they were that Trump was there. But then the family of a Green Beret killed in action wrote a complaint saying we never gave permission to have our headstone on view or to have you there. And then when Vance was defending this, and do we have that clip? I think when Vance was defending this yesterday, he got himself all worked up. Is that the clip we have next, John? I'm sorry, I'm a little confused.
Yeah, no, it is. But before you get to the clip, I just want to say one thing about it, which is the whole thing again was a stunt within a stunt, right? Because they were going to Arlington to honor the 13 people who were killed for the withdrawal of Afghanistan. Now, remember, this is the guy who didn't show up to Normandy on the anniversary of D-Day because it was raining and he didn't want to get his hair wet. I don't think his heart is bleeding for the 13 people who died in the withdrawal from Afghanistan.
Oh, of course not. Of course not.
In military history or military tactics, the most difficult military operation is an orderly retreat. It's really, really hard to withdraw under fire, right? And so it's not surprising that some people died. I mean, this is a very dangerous, large-scale, difficult military operation. But he's trying to focus on it, to focus on, that their administration has failed and that all of this should be investigated. And they're basically doing a Benghazi, right? Benghazi was this not unimportant event, but something that happened, that where some people died. It was an international, but it wasn't expected. It wasn't a scandal. It was a bad event. But they had whole hearings about it, and they said they were doing it to get to hurt her poll ratings, and it actually worked. They discovered the email server in that process, and then that became another non-issue issue. So just to be aware, even this stunt, it's not just they're going to Arlington for political gain. They're doing it as part of this cynical kind of focusing attention on this alleged failure of Harris. And so just so you know, Harris did not criticize them for doing this. There was someone in the campaign who said, well, that's kind of pathetic, or that seems like on brand. Let's see how, and I wish we had time to show the thing, but as the tape that you were going to roll, let's see how Vance responds to those criticisms.
Kamala Harris is disgraceful. We're going to talk about a story out of those 13 brave, innocent Americans who lost their lives. It's that Kamala Harris is so asleep at the wheel that she won't even do an investigation into what happened, and she wants to yell at Donald Trump because he showed up. She can go to hell.
She can go to hell. That's where we are.
Well,
the newspapers have written about this. This is really a lower level of attack than we've really seen in politics, cursing at each other, right?
No,
Sorry,
no,
what were you saying?
No, not at all. JD Vance is really despicable. He is, he's always accusing Kamala Harris and Walz as not being authentic, which is a projection. What we saw there was manufactured outrage, and then an attack so brutal that even people like on CNN were catching their breath.
We're shocked. And every media cycle they lose, I think of these as rounds in a fight. Every day as a round. They lost that round. They tried to make the Harris administration look bad, over Afghanistan, and instead they made themselves look like buffoons and boors, desecrating a military cemetery for political gain, and then crudely calling the vice president, telling her to go to hell. So they lost. They lost that cycle. So speaking about Vance, Vance has a woman problem. Okay. As we know, he's decided really for no reason to declare that women who don't have children are the enemy of the state. I looked it up online. About 17% of the population are women without children. So why would you want to just single out a demographic that accounts for almost a fifth of the country to demonize them, really for no reason? So he made this dumb mistake of talking about childless cat ladies. But unfortunately, he really, being J.D. Vance, means never knowing how to say you're sorry. So here's Kristen Welker giving him chance after chance to apologize or soften that position. Let's see what he does with it.
Let me zoom out a little bit. Then you're calling it a sarcastic comment.
Sure.
And yet some women, and you got the feedback in real time, felt like it was a gut punch to them personally. Do you regret making that comment?
Look, I regret certainly that a lot of people took it the wrong way, and I certainly regret that the DNC and Kamala Harris lied about it.
But do you regret what you said, Senator?
Look, Kristen, I'm going to say things from time to time that people disagree with. I'm a real person. I'm going to make jokes. I'm going to say things sarcastically, and I think that what's important is that we focus on the policy. There are certainly going to be things that I say. If I'm elected vice president, people are going to say, well, I wish he had said that differently. I think it's most important to actually be the person I actually am and to say those sarcastic comments were made in the service of a real substantive point. This country has become too anti-family. It's too expensive to afford a house. It's too expensive to afford groceries. Donald Trump and I want to change that. And unless we get better leadership, we're not going to.
But again, just very quickly, given that people have told you directly, have spoken out, have said that they were offended, they were hurt by those comments, do you wish you never made those childless cat lady comments?
I think that it's much more important for me to just be a normal human being who sometimes says things that people disagree with. I have a lot of regrets, Kristen, but making a joke 3 years ago is not in the top 10 of the list.
He's got strength of character, John. He's just not going to back down from a stupid, pointless comment that he made, because he's a real person, John. He's a real person.
Well, he's a real person. It's interesting. In Hillbilly Elegy, he actually talks about the kind of white working class family that he comes from in the sort of a hillbilly kind of influence. And one of the characteristics is they can never admit error. They can never take responsibility. And actually, one of the reasons the book was heralded is it seemed like a very kind of thoughtful critique coming from within that culture, right? But actually, he's evidencing that. He can't just say that was insensitive, or I'm sorry, or that isn't what I meant, or I meant it a different way, or what I was really talking. No, he just has to say, I'm not sorry.
One thing I read that he said today, because he's been really appearing all kinds of places, was that when someone said, you used to be anti-Trump, and Vance, with a laugh, said, Donald Trump reminds me of it several times a day. So it's just, what I would do to get a sense of that dynamic of those two by themselves, because I think they are strangely alike.
We're going to get to that in a few minutes, Harry. I have a little surprise for everybody. Hang in there.
Oh, yeah?
Yes. But let's just go to another anti-cat lady, anti-childless woman statement that he made.
And I think our conservative idea is that parents and families should determine what children learn, what values they are brought up with. So many of the leaders of the left, and I hate to be so personal about this, but they're people without kids trying to brainwash the minds of our children. And that really disorients me, and it really disturbs me. Randy Weingarten who's the head of the most powerful teachers union in the country. She doesn't have a single child. If she wants to brainwash and destroy the minds of children, she should have some of her own and leave ours the hell alone.
So listen to what he's saying. It's not just how nefarious it is, right? That these people in education, these childless people in education, are trying to brainwash our children, right? They have a malevolent intent, and they're carrying out some kind of evil plan. So it's not just that the childless people they're bad. They're bad, these childless women.
Yeah, no, it's a very, very strong argument that he launched. He repeated it for several years before he ran for office, and now he's having to deal with it. Look, I said this when he was asked to join the ticket. He's a terrible politician. He has no experience. I mean, look, he was a hedge fund guy. Then he wrote this book, and then he ran for Senate, where he's been there for less than a year. I mean, this is not someone with political talent. And we're watching it every time he speaks, including telling Kamala Harris to go to hell.
But also there is this female issue, right? I mean, this idea that there is this really kind of Handmaid's Tale component to this, right? That women's job is to reproduce, right? And so if they're not reproducing, they're not doing their job. Of course, we know that women are losing their abortion rights under the Republicans. Here's a powerful movie video that the Lincoln Project made about this issue.
Driver's license, registration.
Here you go, sir. How's your day going?
That your daughter?
Sure is.
Abigail, right?
How do you know her?
Were you about 8 weeks pregnant? See, you've been spotting recently. You've had any cramps or nausea?
That's personal.
You been taking your prenatal vitamins?
Excuse me?
Are you ticketing me for something?
Where are you heading, Abigail?
To go see my older sister, Natalie.
Well, that's strange. It says here that Natalie's at a concert in Dallas. And your navigation is set to a women's health clinic in one of those abortion states.
We have the right to travel.
Not anymore. Step out of the car.
Please, officer.
Both of you out now. You, sir, are under arrest for crossing state lines to obtain an abortion for a minor under your care. And you, young lady, well, you're under arrest for evading motherhood.
What's so scary about this is it's not that unrealistic.
No, it's not.
So, so these people are the enemy of women. And no surprise, they're losing the female vote by a huge percentage. You know, Harry, I'm glad. Yeah, a huge percentage, and growing, by the way, and growing. You know, one of the things that's interesting is they've done polls of which groups have responded most powerfully to Kamala Harris's candidacy, and it as you might expect, it's women and minorities, and especially Black women. That their rate of signing up to vote has gone up almost 200% since she was brought on the ticket. So I think it's very clear that Vance's anti-women comments are no cat lady jokes. This is the real thing. But, you know, Harry, I'm glad you reminded us about the fact that Vance has made these anti-Trump statements. And, you know, he wants us to forget about that. But, you know, Trump keeps reminding him. And, you know, God bless the people on TikTok, but somebody has found a way to take Vance's anti-Trump statements and put them to music.
So this is really who Donald Trump chose as his running mate?
I'm a never Trump guy. I never liked him. I'm a never Trump guy. 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 I never liked him.
He got off the couch to do a rap.
You know what? Can we just hear that one more time?
I'm a never Trump guy. I'm a never Trump guy. I'm a
never Trump guy.
I'm a
Never liked him. Come on, Harry. You know you want to. Never Trump guy.
I'm a never Trump guy. I'm a never Trump guy.
Never liked him.
I'm a never Trump guy. I'm a never Trump guy.
John, we have a guest to interview.
This is really who Donald Trump chose as his running mate?
Come on, he'll want to sing.
I'm a never Trump guy. I'm a never Trump guy. I'm a never Trump guy. I never liked him. I'm a never Trump guy. I'm a never Trump guy. I'm a never
Catchy, isn't it?
I'm a never Trump guy.
Oh, there you go. There you go. Oh, there you go, Harry. You're getting it.
Never Trump guy. I'm a never Trump guy.
Never liked him. Because after all, Harry, we are never Trump guys.
We're never Trump guys.
Well, I'm very excited to introduce our guest. I would call him a professional Trumpologist. He's been studying Trump for 30 years. He's written 3 books, at least that I'm aware of. Maybe there's more about Trump. David K. Johnston's latest book about Trump is The Big Cheat: How Donald Trump Fleeced America and Enriched Himself and His Family. David, I'm really delighted to have you join us. Thank you for coming on Treating Trump. Hello, how are you?
And just to be clear, 3 books, trilogy, but also half of a 1992 book. It was an expose of the fraudulent way New Jersey regulated casinos. And I've been covering him for 36 years. In fact, it was 36 years ago that I was the first person to write about Donald becoming president someday.
Wow.
Interesting. Well, I notice in your book, I was going to ask this question later, but I'm going to jump to it. You said when he came down the escalator, everybody thought it was a joke. Everybody thought it was a vanity campaign. And
Yes.
but you said, but you didn't. You immediately recognized that this was serious.
First of all, there are all these people applauding wearing shirts. They were paid actors. They were paid $1 each in cash to show up. We know this because there was an ad in Variety offering this to people who some of the people who got the money acknowledged it. He claimed there were thousands of people there. There's no way thousands of people fit into the lobby area of Trump Tower. This is just typical Donald. And his candidacy was just immediately dismissed as a vanity project by the very people who had misread it back in 2012. And I called various people, and I appeared in New York often on CNN and MSNBC, and I would tell various producers and on-air talent, I'd say, he's serious this time. And here's, I can lay out for you the rationale of why he's serious and what's going on here. And I couldn't get anybody to listen to me. And my literary agent and I tried to sell a book. All the publishers said, and my previous books were bestsellers, so I shouldn't have trouble selling a book. They all said, "Oh, he'll be out of the race by the time that your book is ready to go." Ultimately, we did do a book with a publisher who gave me 28 days to write the book. The biography of Trump, but who I had a copy in my hand 2 weeks after I turned in the last page of the manuscript. They really hustled to get it out there, and it was a bestseller, and it was translated into, I think, 10 or 11 foreign languages, won an award in England as the political biography of the year. But Donald is masterful at understanding how to play the news media, and it's part of his con artistry. I mean, Donald is the greatest, most successful con artist in the history of the world.
Yes.
But he is a con artist.
Yes.
So
I wanted to ask you about that. By the way, I'm glad you mentioned his paid crowd, because I was going to bring it up. I was reading your book today, coming up with questions. And when I came across that fact, it made me think, here we're still talking about his crowd size envy right? This crowd size issue has been constant all the way through, going back to the original crowd when he came down the escalator, and we all remember that moment. And you made a very good point in the book. One of the tip-offs that was a fake crowd should have been when he said, yeah, all the Mexicans are rapists, and everybody clapped. And he said, how would you find a crowd of people in Midtown Manhattan to clap for that? But for $50 an hour, yeah, they'll do it.
Yeah. And Donald there's no shame in Donald about anything. Absolutely nothing.
Absolutely no.
It's just not part of who he is. I get people all the time who email me or on call-in radio will go, you're just jealous of Donald because he's so rich. And I tell them, actually, I'm not one bit jealous of Donald. If anything, I feel sorry for the man. He has lived the movie Groundhog Day for his entire life, except it's Groundhog Day as a nightmare. He has been trapped in that year every one of us went through, where we went from being a child to an adult physically. And that was the summer his father sent him to a military academy in New York that was well known for hazing, some say brutalizing the new cadets.
Sure.
We don't know what kind of humiliation he was put through, but I'm sure he was humiliated. And if you listen to Donald and how he talks about women, he talks like a 13 or a 14-year-old boy. And how sad. I mean, Donald is a man who has never known joy. He's never known contentment. He doesn't know love. He says at every crowd very effectively, we love you. We love the poorly educated. But Donald doesn't even love himself. And in all the interviews I did with him over the years, I was always struck by the fact that he's this hollow vessel into which he tries to fill himself with claims of money he doesn't have, as if money is a measure of anything. And of course, in his household where he grew up with his monster of a father, Fred Trump, that's not surprising. And it was one little story about Donald's father that will help explain why he's the way he is. There was a little boy who lived in the neighborhood named Johnny Messer. He was younger than Donald. And one day he's riding his bicycle down the sidewalk. He's 7 or 8 years old, Johnny recalls. And he drops a quarter. And it's right in the sidewalk in front of the Trump home, which is a couple of doors from his house. And Fred Trump pulls in his big Cadillac at exactly that moment. Fred gets out, walks back to the sidewalk as Johnny is going to retrieve his quarter, picks it up before Johnny does, and goes, holding it up in his face, that's mine now.
Wow.
Who does that?
It's like stealing candy from a baby, literally.
Exactly. And this is, imagine if you grew up with Fred Trump as your father, you're likely to be as screwed up as all of his children were.
I have a couple questions for you, if I can quickly, which is,
sure.
I had heard, and maybe you can confirm or actually maybe disconfirm this, was that Trump was serious about running for president in 2016, but supposedly he had reassured Melania that he would lose. Because,
what I can tell you is that Donald did not expect to win. He was surprised. And of course, let's remember, he lost the popular vote by more than 3 million votes. The next time he lost by 7. Even with Joe Biden running, he was going to lose this one by probably 10 million votes. But we don't elect by popular vote. We elect by this racist institution, the Electoral College, that's a holdover from 18th century compromise politics. But Donald had no expectation of winning. He told many people he did not expect to win. And there was no preparation of any kind. I mean, Kamala Harris's people out there already are making lists of people who could put, there are about roughly 4,000 political appointments that a president makes, of which about 1,200, 1,300 are significant appointments. I mean, appointing somebody to some blue ribbon commission that's house dressing as an honor is not a big deal, but important positions. And I'm sure they are busy looking at the list that Joe Biden had and working on vetting some people for key positions. But Donald had done absolutely nothing. And so one of the reasons that they were not as successful as Steve Bannon, who came up with the phrase deconstructing the administrative state, That's Harvard and Yale language for we're going to destroy the federal government as you know it.
Right.
Because they weren't ready. And on top of that, Donald is not a hard worker. One of the big stories that the politics reporters missed in 2016 was Hillary Clinton was everywhere, and she ultimately collapsed one day. We've all seen the video of her collapsing because she's sick and she's continuing to go. Nobody wrote about the fact, except me, as best I can tell, that Donald disappeared for days at a time. Mm-hmm. And he's been doing that lately. He just disappears into Trump Tower or Mar-a-Lago or Bedminster, and he might call in to Newsmax or Fox or some other friendly organization. And that's because Donald has big mood swings. And just to be clear,
say more about that. Yeah.
I don't know what the DSM is. I just, people who have mood swings. I've sat with colleagues in the newsroom who are, they're up today and they're down tomorrow, right. But they soldier on.
I'm really glad you mentioned the mood component. We were talking about that before you came on the show, that Harry was pointing out how even in his latest speeches, you see a depressive component where he's kind of low energy. He's kind of repeating this red meat rhetoric, but in a very sort of low energy way, and even showing a little depressive kind of affect. And I think one of the unappreciated aspects of his psychopathology is that I think he is on the bipolar spectrum. I mean, anybody who can rage tweet, 20 tweets at 3 a.m. as a regular activity, obviously has got some hypomanic energy. I wrote an article about this in the New Republic in 2015 about Bill Clinton and Donald Trump both having a hypomanic temperament, but directing it in radically different ways. Mm-hmm. I think that the depressive component is hidden. And when he's depressed, he's maybe more angry and agitated. But I think that you make a very good point. When he's hiding at Mar-a-Lago for 3 days and playing golf, maybe he's actually somewhat depressed, and that's why he's hiding.
Well, you can also see it in some other things. My whole career, I have found paying attention to body language to be useful. I came back once from a party that only by fate and luck did I end up being invited to. I was the only journalist in the room, even though it was the top level people at the New York Times and the family, the Sulzberger family. And I came back in the newsroom and I said, Hal Raines will be the next editor of the paper. And people said, well, how do you know that? And I said, because I watched how Sulzberger stood and addressed the two candidates. And I can tell you he doesn't care for one of them. And he's and I don't mean this in any other sense than business, but he's in love with the other guy, Hal Raines. And of course, Hal Raines became editor. So I've always paid attention to body language. And Donald, if you watch there are many film clips of him where he lumbers. He's forcing himself just to walk up to the stage. And those are very revealing of his mood. Sometimes you'll see Donald come up on stage and he's jumping around and whatnot. And those go to his mood swings. And I don't think you need to be a professional to identify that he has big mood swings. David, it's something that politics reporters won't touch with a 10-foot pole.
Well, thank you so much for coming in and talking with us today. I really appreciate it. I'm looking forward to your fourth book on Trump, which I'm sure will be coming out soon.
Me too.
I hope not. My next book will propose a new tax system in this country.
Okay, good. Post-Trump. All right, very good. Bye-bye.
Thank you, David, so much.
Bye-bye.
Take care. All right, Harry. Well, we're up to the shrink wrap portion of the show. What have we learned this week?
As always, we've learned a great amount. But before we go into shrink wrap, I just want to make a brief announcement. As some of you may know, I'm on faculty at Cornell in the psychology department. And this fall, I launched a course that I've been working on for months called Pursuing Happiness. In this course, I'm really trying to help students to think about what does it mean to be happy? Because it's a concept which, if you look at it, it gets quite complicated. Is it a feeling? Is it a state of mind? Is it based on achievement or love or attachment? And I have to say, I have some of the best students in the world, and I've been so thrilled with them. So I put together a channel, a YouTube channel, which I call Harry Segal's Happiness Channel. And what I've been doing is posting little 4 or 5 minute happiness spots, is what I call them. And I already have 2 up, and I would really love it if our audience would subscribe and take a look at them, because the more the merrier. Maybe it will bring on more happiness. That's where just go onto YouTube and type in Harry Segal, the Happiness Channel, subscribe, and it would be great to see you there. Thanks. Now, as far as what did we learn this week? Well, I think we're learning a great deal about Trump as he's taking these hits from the press, from the Lincoln Project, from George Conway's group, from the Harris campaign. We're watching what happens when he has to struggle with evidence that he can't ignore, that is calling him out on his weakness, on his not getting the cultural moment the way that he used to. And he's watching the possibility of becoming president again slip away. And this is really helping us to see how his psychological structure is composed. We're watching and we're seeing how it's both rigid, but it's also quite delicate. He can collapse in a moment during a speech and rev himself up by rallying the audience to laughing. And we're going to see more and more of that. And as I keep saying, our job is to help our audience to think about Trump and Kamala Harris and other political figures in psychological terms. And we're filming this on Thursday afternoon. Tonight, Kamala Harris and Tim Walz are giving their first interview together. And I predict that they will appear strong, confident, happy, joyful, because they are going to relate to the audience as full human beings instead of people who reflect Trump's narrow victimhood and cause for revenge, as our guest described. So keep watching, folks. We really want you to see that.
Yeah.
John?
Well, I think what my thought of the week is we're finally seeing shrinking Trump. We are watching him deflate in real time. And we are also watching him be narcissistically injured skillfully over and over and again. I'm sort of almost like a bullfight where they just keep the picador, just keep putting another stab and another stab into the bull. He's being killed by 1,000 cuts. And so finally, we are seeing him shrink. And it's a great relief. And actually, it's a great joy, which come to think of it. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes. No, I'm sorry to step on your line, John. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Harry. What are you going to say?
Well, again, he's always been shrinking. It's just that these actions are revealing it so we can see it. And the more he loses, the worse he'll feel and the more we'll get to glimpse who he really is.
Well, I don't know about you, Harry, but I just feel a little gleeful. Hit it, Rex.
I'm a never Trump guy. I'm a never Trump guy. I'm a never Trump guy. I never liked him. I'm a never Trump guy. I'm a never liked him. I'm a never Trump guy. 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 I never liked him.
Now I know what it was like to work with Jerry Lewis. I feel like Dean Martin from the 50s. John, this was such a pleasure. I had such a good time talking with you today.
Me too. All right, folks. Be well.
Be well, and we'll see you next time. Our show drops on Fridays, so be sure to come back next time.
Hit it again, Rex.
I'm a never Trump guy. I'm a never Trump guy. I'm a never Trump guy. I never liked him. I'm a never Trump guy. 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 I never liked him.
Bye.